Hello, friends. I'm David, and we're here doing EV World News where we talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm happy today to be here with our founder, Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
Doing well, thank you very much.
Well, let's get right into it. We've got an interesting article about insurance, not something that we typically have as an issue. What seems to be going on is people are having difficulty insuring electric vehicles. And this comes to us from City AM. Insurers are facing huge challenges in handling EVs. Experts have warned today, which could block consumers' transition away from polluting petrol and diesel vehicles. It's the uncertainty over the rising cost of repairing EVs, particularly damaged batteries, has caused some insurers to back out of providing policies for electric cars. Now, I know this is one thing I think Tesla actually took to doing their own insurance for a lot of
Yep.
their vehicles. But I think part of it was the fact that they considered their vehicles to be so safe that that took a lot of it out. I was talking to somebody a couple days ago, and in that discussion, they were saying that Elon Musk is thinking in 10 to 15 years, we may not need all the safety features we currently have in cars because the cars will be self-driving and they won't play bumper cars. And, so maybe there won't be the need for as many safety features, which would drive down the cost of the cars. This is a big thing Tesla's obviously been working on. That, you've heard the stuff about the giga casting and all that. It's just kind of interesting to kind of see how some of that is playing out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I would really be interested to hear from folks that have electric vehicles if they have experience. I get a sense that this is probably this particular article, while I'm sure it applies to parts of the United States, I'm wondering if it isn't more UK centric. It seems to be that there's more of a question, about the viability of electric vehicles, particularly in the UK. But I own an electric vehicle. I have insurance on it, which of course you're required to have, um, and haven't noticed any particular bump up or anything like that in my insurance. So it wouldn't surprise me that at some point, of my particular carrier, who shall go unnamed, unless they want to advertise with us, that there may come a time. Well, what I'm seeing more is the issue with insuring properties in certain parts of the country that are more subject to, violent, on weather. I mean, if you look at last week, can you imagine New York City and the amount of
flooding.
rain that they got, and there are people driving through, 2 and 3 foot deep, rivers of water flowing down through Manhattan. That's obviously got, and all those basement apartments that were,
Oh, it's crazy.
becoming drains for the street. I mean, it's difficult to imagine. Of course, then there's the Florida and the Gulf Coast, and there. I think I posted an article recently that the most dangerous uh, part of. Whoop, did something to my screen here. All right, hang on. Sorry.
You're still there.
Okay. Anyway, that the most prone part of the country is the Texas Gulf Coast to expensive property damage and things like that. So that probably is a larger concern than if you can get insurance to cover your electric vehicle. But the more those, because the same company that insures my car is the same company that insures my house.
You
And I'm
know,
sure there are a lot of people that have that. So it'll be interesting to see because, as the damages and things go up, insurance companies have to, have more to pay
deal with
out.
it.
So they're going to have to get more customers or raise more, raise the premiums more. And probably it's likely to raise the premiums more.
Yeah, back in the was it in U.S. weather, the worst disaster we've had in the United States was a hurricane that hit Galveston, I think in 1898, killed like
Yeah.
5,000 people or more.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
really not sure how many because they probably didn't have accurate census records there,
Yeah.
possibly because of tourists and other things that may have been there. They had no idea it was coming. They had
Yeah.
warning like people do today. The insurance business is kind of interesting because you have your insurance company, and then it has a reinsurance company,
Right above it.
another reinsurance company, and they all kind of keep going and they kind of back each other up so that the entire insurance industry, if there's one disaster over here, it kind of helps by making up
Yeah.
premiums from over here, but they're constantly backing these things up so that one insurance company just isn't absolutely crushed. The one thing though that does is that enough premiums have to come in across the industry to still cover all of
Yeah.
those possibilities. But this was the City AM was a UK article,
Yeah.
and so this is more geared towards they're talking about Aviva Insurance rolling back insurance on the Tesla Y. And I know are able to offer a policy at renewal. Well, the thing is, the Y is a very recent vehicle, so it might be difficult to have good estimates of claims and
Yeah, exactly.
who knows. I don't
I thought,
think
yeah,
that
they're covering their derriere, I think, on that one.
I don't think that Tesla owners are probably really creating the damage there. I think you're probably just who knows, having people um, get in
Well,
accidents with them. It's
another
hard to
issue. In
say.
fact, yeah, there was an article published that came out on the Cybertruck, and the fact that the Cybertruck is such a different kind of technology that repair shops probably aren't going to touch it. So how do you get? And that's their point was, how do you get insurance for a vehicle that is so different from everything that we've worked on for the last several decades or half a century? How are you going to cover something you don't know how to repair, and who's going to
Well,
repair it?
yeah, and some of the stuff is expensive. I know I watched a video a while back of somebody, their McLaren broke down and nobody would come out and tow it. And the tow companies just simply weren't willing to come and hook up to a McLaren for fear of damaging a several $100,000 car,
Yeah.
and how that may play out. Anyways, our next article is about metal loving microbes.
Oh yeah, this one I really enjoy because I have a interest in it. I could point that direction to my table where I have a microscope set up. I've got slides. I've got samples of dirt. I've got insects and stuff. I've taken a really keen interest in this whole area of mycology.
Okay.
So EVs and mycology, and it turns out actually they're linked because as you dig down into this whole area, you find out that these bacteria, that the minerals that plants need have to have mycelium, fungi that are feeding and using and working with the microbes that gather the minerals out of the soil. So it's the microbes that actually break down the soil. And so it only makes sense that you would want to look at those if you can find microbes that have a certain affinity
Right.
for different kinds of minerals. And it turns out that there are a species of bacteria that do enjoy eating lanthanite, which is basically in the periodic table is the area that's associated with certain rare earths. So scientists are working on a way to utilize that property of these particular microbes to take and reduce the environmental impact of processing rare earths, which up to this point is pretty environmentally detrimental. So if you can get the microbes to do, they're estimating about a third of the processing cost. If you can get them to do that for you, then you suddenly make the process less expensive and less environmentally damaging. So it's pretty cool, and that's why I kind of got excited because that's an area that I've been studying for the last several months. And
Nice.
actually, yesterday I pulled some. Day before yesterday, I went into a local cornfield that had just been harvested, and I scraped up some of the soil, brought the soil back, and then reached into into the little cup that I was using and pulled out just a tiny bit of it and put it on my slide. Holy smoke, what you should see when you start looking at those things at 100 power and or 40x power, it is phenomenal because you see all these little strands that are coming off the roots, and attached to those strands are these brilliant little, best way I can describe them is emeralds. I mean, they're microscopic grains of dirt, but they are, and under the microscope, they glitter like a diamond. And here's these little threads, translucent threads, tying that all together. And so if we can figure out a way to harness that very same process, we're ahead of the game. We lower the cost of the materials, and we make them less environmentally damaging.
So how far
So
do you have
that's
to
why I got
travel
it.
to go find a cornfield in Nebraska? Dang. That's
I just have to go up the block here about 2 blocks. Now, interestingly, it's I want to see if they're going to till it, because last year it was soybeans, and this year they had a really good looking corn crop in there, and
yeah.
they did not. They went through and basically shelled the corn, the cobs as they were going through, and leaving all the residue on the field. So it'll be interesting to see if they will till that under, or whether they will just simply drill their seeds in for next year. So
Yeah,
there's a
so
reason for that. It has to do with preservation of the soil biome and things like that.
yeah,
So
so for any of our listeners who might categorize or stereotype Nebraskans as living around a lot of corn, if you come here, you won't be disappointed
no, no.
because there's lots of corn.
Well, fortunately, I live in on the edge of the metro area, so I can have access to cornfields easily, rather than where I used to live, which wasn't quite as easy. So,
Yeah, I'm a block from the end of civilization, and that's why I get coyotes in my yard occasionally.
yep,
So
yep.
yeah, but anyways, so rare earth elements are essential components of electric cars. Retrieving these metals from raw ore requires processing with acids and solvents. Through a benign practice called biosorption, these metal-loving bacteria, the Schuanella
Oh,
onedensis,
don't even
oneidensis. Anyways,
I don't even try.
I know. The current methods of rare earth element purification rely on organic solvents and harsh chemicals. The
Hmm.
methods are costly and environmentally damaging. This green alternative will use microbes to selectively absorb and purify the rare earth elements, eliminating the need for harmful chemicals. We're going to make the purification process for the battery elements much greener, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's interesting to see how that may play out. I'm curious how big of a scale this has to be done on to make
they
it
don't spell that
feasible.
out. Now, connected to that, I happened to connect with a former professor. And there I go again. I'm gonna stop that. I keep hitting my keyboard and it changes my screen. I connected with a professor that used to be here at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. He is now over at Iowa State University. And interestingly, this is an area that he's actually researching, is using the bacteria, finding bacteria to do various mineral purification processes or mineral extraction processes. I don't think he's focused, if I recall, he's not focused on rare earths, but there's a growing body of research that's looking at how do we take this process, like I said, that I could see under my microscope yesterday. How do we take that and utilize that to get the minerals that we need, but not do it in as destructive a way.
All right. Well, so for our last article today, we're going to talk about, and this you and I were kind of discussing whether this is accurate or not, the loneliest stretch of highway in the United States, finally getting some EV chargers. My disagreement with this is I used to live in North Dakota, and there's some pretty lonely stretches of interstate up there, but this is about Colorado. The drive southeast from Denver on Route 50, and the roadside soon morphs into oceanic spans of grass.
Yeah.
And this is US Highway 50 going east through Kansas. And Kansas is pretty desolate. you get outside of you got some cities, you got Topeka and Wichita, and obviously Kansas City's huge,
Right.
but it's pretty desolate outside of that. But anyways, um, let's see.
You can now drive it in an electric car and find charging stations through what used to be one of the loneliest, stretches of highway in the country. Of course, we for a long time, those of us that looked with envy at Interstate 70 because Tesla put all those chargers along there, and then they went up and they put a bunch up in the Dakotas, and finally got around to doing, putting up chargers across Nebraska. Still a bit sparse. I think we obviously need more of them. But I think the point of this article is that we are finally getting to where if you want to take and drive, across country in an electric car, 200 miles, 300 miles range, that you can now do that with some level of confidence.
Well, the single-celled metal-eating microbes from the last article seem to be all over this map, and you can see the single cells. Each single cell is a charging station.
Yeah.
The dark orange is a 12.5 mile radius, and the light yellow is 25 miles from the charging station. And it was showing here you still got this one little stretch from Lamar over to Hutchinson that's got a little bit of a ways there, but as you can see, it's funny, there's little charging stations, all kinds of places, kind of north, south of the freeway. But you got a pretty good little stretch there. I can't quite tell. I would guess that's probably more than 150 miles, maybe that stretch. Hard to say.
Well,
See if
I've
it
never
tells
driven it,
us.
so I can't tell you.
Yeah, let's see. Route 50 is fraught for similar updated reasons. Newer interstates have siphoned off traffic, making some stretches even more isolated, and EV charging stations are sparse. Making the full trek in a battery powered car requires temperate weather, a few white knuckle stints, and a
Yeah.
tailwind or two, but it is doable as of a few months ago. With the right EV, a pioneering traveler can now cross America's loneliest road on public fast chargers alone. Let's
Yeah.
see.
So we're getting,
Oh,
obviously, we've got a lot more chargers to, to install, but it was encouraging to see that they had, we're beginning to get some of the kind of coverage that we're going to need to make the transition.
right. I told you I've got a guy on one of my tennis teams that he refuses to fly and he drives that BMW i3 that has a range of about 80 miles.
Yeah.
So every hour he's stopping somewhere and charging. And it's always interesting because he'll be sending our team photos of interesting people he meets at
Yeah.
different places and stuff like that. But you figure he's ended up going all the way from up here in Omaha down here to Orlando and all the way from Omaha over here. I'm not sure which state is which. I think this is Arizona here. Anyways, all the way to
Yeah.
Phoenix.
That's New Mexico.
This one's New Mexico. This Arizona
Yeah.
over
That's
here.
Arizona. And the one
Okay.
to the right there
Yeah.
is New Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is pretty good little area here he's got to get
Yeah,
through.
well, yeah, the Four
Maybe he
Corners
comes
area,
through.
there's just not a lot there.
Yeah, he's
Although
got.
that being said, Electrify America has just put I think 6 fast charging, 350 kilowatt fast charging stations at the entrance to the Grand Canyon.
Nice. I saw
So
that.
you can now, go to the Grand Canyon. Now we were approached, my quick bike project, we were approached at one point to put our solar charged electric bike station at the very same location.
Oh,
And
wow.
instead of taking your car and parking it up in the park, you'd simply take one of our electric bikes and then you'd ride. They just finished this beautiful paved trail about 7 miles long from Tusain. I think that's how they pronounce it, up to the south entrance of the park and into the park. And they wanted to do that to obviously reduce traffic and things like that. So I have somewhat of a familiarity with that particular location.
Yeah, that's still it's pretty fascinating to see how much infrastructure there is out there, even in, you look here along I-29 going down from Omaha to Kansas City, you see one, two, three, four, five, six, seven-ish, let's say six stations for about 140-mile drive. That's quite a few
Now, the main
charging
one everybody
stations.
uses that drives from here to Kansas City is in St. Joseph, Missouri. There's a fast charge station there.
Yeah, St. Joe's all right. I think that's a pretty standard place for a lot of people to stop on their way, whether they're in an EV or a gas-powered car.
Right, right.
And then, the other one you got down here is like Harrisonville, and depends, I guess, on where all you're headed. But anyways, that's pretty much what we got to cover today, Bill. Good
Cool.
show today.
Well, I'll keep adding more things. I've got a couple more stories to add to the headlines, and we will talk again on Thursday.